Before going on to today's game, I want to give a huge shout out to the big guy in the picture, Runeberg, one of my great chess friends. He showed me this game. He has showed me many games and many ideas. And if you've ever been to the Reykjavik Open, I'm sure he's shown you some interesting puzzles or games. Now he resides in the Faroe Islands, so if you play the Reykjavik Open, he will show you some things. But without further ado, let's move on to the game. Hi, today we have a very cool game. With the white pieces we have Danish Grandmaster Carsten Hoi, who I would assume is not well known to anybody outside Scandinavia. And with the black pieces we have a famous Grandmaster, Boris Gulko, who I think is the only Grandmaster who has won the USSR Championship and the American Championship. He is quite well known. He's old now, but he had a plus score against Kasparov. Just a super strong Grandmaster. But in this game, this is Carsten Hoi's immortal game for sure. So Carsten Hoi is white. He started with d4. e6 from Gulko, inviting the French defense, but Hoi decides to keep it in d4 territory with knight f3. Now we have the innocent looking e3, setting up the collie perhaps. Knight f6, bishop d3, b6, white castles. A very sensible setup with black, one that I like to employ myself against systems like the London system and perhaps the Torre attack. Now Gulko takes. This defines the pawn structure and takes away the opportunity of white to take with a c pawn, which is more dry. So now we have a pawn structure that is not symmetrical, and black will set up his pawns like this, exactly like he's doing, and claim that he has dynamic counter chances later in the game. So we have normal development. White plays knight to f1, opening up his bishop and aiming to put the knight on g3, influencing things on the king side. Knight bd7 by black. A very harmonious setup by black, but of course non-threatening, but very dynamic. Knight g3, bishop comes to f8. Usually this means that black will play g6 and put the bishop on g7 with a solid setup. But Hoi plays bishop g5. We have h6 by Gulko, kicking the bishop back, and now bishop to d2. Queen c7. This is the normal square for the queen in this setup. Bishop back to c2. Presumably this has some ideas of putting the queen in front of the bishop and setting up a battery here. Black plays bishop d5. We have b3 by Hoi. Queen b7, lining up the queen and the bishop on the same diagonal and threatening to damage white's pawn structure. White decides not to allow that and plays knight to h4. And now b5. So with this move, black is kind of discouraging white to play c4, because when you play c4 we will take, and white will have to worry about these pawns being weak. But white is not discouraged. He plays queen to h5, queen to d3. His intentions are clear. He wants to threaten some things on the king side. At the moment he's pretty far away. I mean, this knight is covering h7 and this knight is already protected. So your only idea is knight to h5. But it doesn't threaten anything because of the extra knight. So it's not at all clear why this should be threatening to black, and probably it isn't. Here black decided to get aggressive. He played g5, kicking away the knight, and the knight goes back to f3. And now Gulko decides to inflict some weaknesses on the king side. Bishop takes f3, but perhaps this wasn't the best idea, because white will now be able to use the g file to his advantage by simply moving the king to g1, and then the rook will arrive on the g file. And this will happen in the game. Bishop g7, and now a very aggressive move by white. He played h4, simply trying to open up the king side. He doesn't mind losing a pawn. G takes h4, which is what he does. He loses the pawn, but now knight e4, and now the g file is open, so a rook coming to g1 will be much more devastating. Queen c6 by Gulko. He had to attend to this undefended pawn on d6. Now king h1, and with the white squared bishop having vanished for black, it's very hard to do anything on this diagonal, because we already have a knight, we already have a pawn, and the pawn is well defended, so the king is safe on h1. Gulko played knight to h5. I'm not entirely sure about this move. It doesn't do anything to hinder white's plans, and now rook to g1. Here Gulko tried to make a run for it. King to f8. The rook was threatening him on the g file, so he gets out of the pin and goes the other way. He couldn't really go to the corner. So if the king goes to the corner, this battery becomes pretty strong, and we have several ways to take advantage of it. One of them is to simply play knight d6, and the queen wants to come to h7, and there's knight takes f7 as well, so not much to be done. There's also even violent moves like bishop takes h6. So all in all, yeah, if you take, I have knight g5 and mate threat here, and there's actually a beautiful line here. If f5, I have knight f7 and queen takes f5. Beautiful mate. So this explains why Gulko didn't go to the corner. He went with his king to f8. King f8. Let's get the board again. But now Hoi unleashed fury on the black position. What did he do? Rook takes g7. The king isn't going anywhere. Now you have two choices. King takes g7 and knight takes g7. This one is fairly easier because we play bishop takes h6 and there's an immediate pin here, and you can't really go anywhere, can you? King g8, I will bring the other rook and you toast. King e7 and you're already done material, and white has an ongoing attack. You can't really do that. So Gulko decided to take with the king. But now, of course, we should introduce another piece into the attack, but Hoi had other ideas. What did he do? Rook g1 is a normal move, but he made the king stay on the king side. This is a beautiful king hunt. Bishop takes h6. Cracker of a move. Now what to do? We can't really not take it. Let's have a quick look at that. Let's say, okay, of course, king h7, you walk into discovery check, so let's say king h8. But now this knight takes on d6. And worst case scenario, I can take on e8. and I'm not down any material. I'm actually up some pawns. I have what, 6 pawns against 5, the bishop pair, and an ongoing attack, and I can break with d5 in some cases. So king takes h6 is the best way to refute the sacrifice, is to accept it. But in this case it didn't really matter because both moves are losing. And now rook g1, closing down the g file and pinning this king to h6. This king is in grave danger. Gulko tried f5, logical, trying to shut down this wonderful battery here on this diagonal. But Hoi was, he didn't care. Queen e3, I'll introduce the queen. And there's a beautiful variation here. f4, I mean, what else? Well, let's see, if you move the king, then you're in grave danger. The queen will enter the fray, threatening to take here, and there's nothing to be done. So f4 seems kind of forced, and that's what Gulko did. But now a fantastic move. You would think that white would have to move the queen, but no. Brilliant move. Knight takes d6, leaving the queen on pre. And what happens if we take the queen? Knight f7. Checkmate, Czechoslovakia. No soup for you. I just love this game. So he took the knight. But what now? Queen d3. Reintroducing the mate threat here on h7, but there's also a mate threat on g6. Now what is the only piece that can cover two such squares at the same time? That's a knight. So of course Gulko cover the mates. So what now? I mean, you can play rook g6, king h7, you have some discoveries, but it doesn't look like it's mate, and you're down a lot of material, so what to do? It's meant to, actually. Queen h7, a beautiful finish to this game. Gulko resigned. He shouldn't have resigned, he should have played it out. Knight takes h7, and then a beautiful checkmate. Rook g6. We're only down a queen, a rook, and a knight. But checkmate ends the game immediately. That's the rules of chess. Checkmate ends the game immediately. A beautiful game by Carsten Hoi. And I think even with Larsen being Danish, this challenges as the Danish immortal. A truly beautiful game. As a little Christmas bonus, I will leave you with this wonderful tactic, although we're using this hideous board. I just want to differentiate from the game that we just looked at. But this is a beautiful tactic that I observed in an online game yesterday. And it wasn't played. But I saw that white had a great move here. And I looked at it afterwards to confirm if I was correct. So it's white to move and win here. A great tactic. And I thought I'd share it here on this video because the end of the main line is very similar to what we just saw in the Carsten Hoi game, the Danish immortal. White has the wonderful move here. Knight takes g6. And the point here is, if f takes g6, we play rook takes h5, check. This undermines the queen. So if you take on h5, I simply take your queen. And if you play king g7, I deflect your king, then I take your queen. Okay. But what if I take your queen? queen takes d4. Well then, I enter Carsten Hoi territory. I play knight f8. This you can't take, because I will take on h5 with mate. So you're forced to put your king on h6 like Gulko. But, just like in the Carsten Hoi game, you will be mated on g6. Down on Lato material. This time we have a knight covering h7, but in the other game we had the bishop here and a knight cementing the king on h6, but a somewhat similar pattern that I thought deserved to be here. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.